My grandpa was born in the 1800s in a prairie wagon coming across to Washington State. He was born before television, and yet he got to watch human beings land on the moon on television. It's really incredible when you think about it. But in the 95 years he lived, the amount of change he saw, I believe we're going to see more change in the next 30 years. Why is that? Because he was born in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And right now we're in the beginning of the digital age. Each of these ages or revolutions has more change faster than the last. So how can you really keep grounded? How can you thrive? And how can you be successful when there's that much change? So I got my first computer at a really early age of 14. That was early in the 80s to get a computer, not anymore. I got a Commodore 64. In the 90s, I started building networks and pulling cable and building servers. And always learning, though, always trying new things. I'd pick up a programming language and try to automate processes at work. I'd learn about this new technology that was coming out. So I got introduced into what we now call the cloud in the early 2000s. So I moved from building physical infrastructure, like racks of servers, plugging them in and running cables, to building digital infrastructure, building infrastructure by writing code. And then I kind of moved into teaching people how to do that. Now I help businesses transform themselves using digital infrastructure. But the main thing about that journey for me was always learning, never being happy where I was, always pushing forward, always trying new things. And I'm in my 40s now. Do I know what I'm going to do when I grow up? No, I don't. But I can tell you now that I'm still out there, I'm still learning, I'm still trying new things. One of the interesting things about technology is we've seen it get really easy to use over the years. If you've been around a while, you probably remember DOS. And if you can remember trying to send an email or God forbid, trying to browse the web using DOS, it was nearly impossible. Then Windows came out and it abstracted away a lot of that complexity, a lot of that difficulty, and it became very easy to use. And then iPhones and iPads came out, and they're designed with ease of use front of mind. So the ability that we have today to work with data sets and systems and programs and applications that we didn't have then is amazing. I mean, you can do things today with, this computer you have in your pocket that's more powerful than the computer that was on the space shuttle, that's more powerful by 1,000 times than my first Commodore 64. The things you can do with that are amazing, and you couldn't have done them 15, 20 years ago. And if you think about it, the kids today are really the first digital natives. My son got his first touchscreen device when he was 3. It was a first generation iPhone. I pulled the SIM card out, loaded some preschool games on it, and he thought he was so cool walking around with his phone in his back pocket, whipping it out and playing games and stuff. And let me tell you, my data plan has really suffered because of that. But he can't remember a time before having access to data, information, the web, everything on demand whenever he wanted it. And he can't remember a time when touchscreens weren't the norm. So the world he's growing up in is very different than the world I grew up in. But taking all of that aside, you have to look at life as not as an end goal, but as a journey. And education is the same thing. Every day of your life, you're learning something new. You're pressing forward. And once you realize that there's not a point in your life when you're going to stand up and say, "Yep, I'm done. My brain's full. I don't have to learn anymore. I know everything." Once you realize that and you start pushing forward, you can be a lot more successful, a lot happier. And education is like a muscle, or learning is like a muscle. The more you do it, the really easier it becomes. It becomes very natural just to sit up and go, okay, I learned how to program Ruby, next I'm going to learn some Python or whatever. Or I'm going to pick up this new application. I'm going to finally, install Snapchat on my phone and figure out how it works. Whatever it is, trying something new every day is very important. But if we look back and look forward, we can get an idea of where we're going. So over the years, over the last 20 or 30 years, we've seen computing or computers become in everything now. They're in our cars, they're in our toasters, they're in our refrigerators, they're going to be in our desks, our doors, they run our lives. If you look at it, the new Ford GT that just came out has 10 million lines of computer code in it. A Boeing 787 has 7 million lines of code in it. Just in a few years, that's made that much of a jump. And if you also look at it, if you're watching Tesla's announcement a few days ago, they have just announced that all of their cars are going to have all of the hardware needed for fully autonomous driving starting, I think it was last week. Every car shipped by them is going to have the hardware, not the software. And they'll be able to push out an update within a year or two to go ahead and enable that. So looking at where we've been and where we're going really allows us to see that there's going to be more data, there's going to be more computers, there's going to be more ability to learn about what we're doing. And if you take another example, I had to buy a sander a few weeks ago. I have a project I'm working on. That great-grandpa I talked about made a coffee table. And when I was a kid, I used to hit it with a hammer and all sorts of stuff that kids do. So I'm going to sand it down and make it nice now. But so I do what everybody does today. Went to Amazon and said, okay, let's find a sander. Now, did I look for the sander that looked cool? Or did I look for the sander that had 1,000 reviews? Exactly. So that's an example of a database decision. Whereas, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been going into Home Depot and going, well, I think that one looks nice, which is an emotional decision. Database decisions tend to be a lot better, a lot more successful than emotional decisions. So when you really kind of take it apart and you sum it up, there's just a couple things I really want to leave you with. Try new things. Don't be afraid. Install a new app on your phone. Heck, install Snapchat and have a teenager teach you how it works. That's what I had to do. A 12-year-old niece came over and she showed me a couple of things. I was like, oh, that's how that works. Successful people are always learning, always trying new things. They're not afraid to push the boundaries. So if you take these lessons and you continue learning and you continue trying new things and you're not afraid to install new apps and try new things, maybe you can go ahead and write a book for your descendants with your ox cart to moon landing story. Thank you.